Welcome everyone. This is 2020 When Plans Change. As we all know, this has been a year full of you name it. We've had a pandemic. There's been quite an election process here in the US. We are addressing systemic racism as a nation. And so it has been a busy and full year for all of us. As that year starts to wind down and come to a close, we think this is a great time to just have some reflection on what has happened this past year and how has that impacted our organizations and our work in companion animal welfare, and how can things like strategic planning write the course through these times and help keep us on track. We've got a great panel lined up for you guys tonight. We're going to hear from 3 completely different organizations, all talk about strategic planning and how it's really important for all organizations, regardless of what you're doing or how big or how large you are. Before we dive into the panel, I do want to go through some housekeeping items quickly first. Let's see here. First and foremost, as an attendee, all of you guys are automatically muted. You don't have to worry about accidentally unmuting yourself or turning on your camera. We take care of that on our end. So go ahead and sit back and relax, enjoy the discussion this evening. You will see in your chat box, chats coming through, that's coming from our end. We'll be sharing resources with you guys throughout the evening tonight. Additionally, we are going to record the session. So the session in full will be recorded and posted to network.bestfriends.org. That's network.bestfriends.org. At one point tomorrow, we will email you guys the link to the recording as well. Additionally, that page will have all of the resources that are shared in the chat tonight, plus some additional resources. Oh, Paula, it looks like we're having some mute issues there. There we go. So that's the chat functionality. Very important. We do want to hear from you guys tonight. So we want this discussion to be audience driven as well. And so if you look on your navigation, you'll be able to see a Q&A box. If you click that box, you guys can type questions directly to us on our end. And so we'll see those and I'll be able to pull them up and share them with our panelists so our panelists can answer your guys' questions directly as well. So that's the Q&A box on your guys' navigation. Let me just make a quick note to make sure I've got through all of my housekeeping items here. I think we are good to go. All right, with that, I'm going to go ahead and start introducing our panel. First up, we have Paula Powell with El Paso Animal Services. Hi, Paula.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we've got Becca Brent with Neighborhood Pets in Cleveland. Hi, Becca.
Hi, thanks for including me.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. And then next up, we've got Brent Tolner with Best Friends.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going? All right. Well, thank all of you. Thank you all for joining this evening. We are going to go ahead and get rolling with some of our questions. And so, Paula, I'm going to shoot it over to you first. Can you just tell us a little bit about El Paso Animal Services, your role there? Just kind of give us an organizational debrief.
Okay, really quick. My name is Paula Powell. I am the director at El Paso Animal Services. And I became director in 2017 after working about 23 years in Parks and Recreation. I was assigned to Animal Services by our city manager, and one of the things that he wanted was results. So hence, I'm here with the strategic plan talking about that because that's how it all started. It's an open admission shelter serving over 800,000 population here in West Texas with an intake. Traditionally, I would say 26,000, but we're ending the year this year, so I'm going to start saying it at about 16,000. So very, very good year so far.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. So what does strategic planning mean to you and to El Paso, and when did you guys really hone in and get started with that process?
Well, the city of El Paso as a whole, all of the departments started strategic planning back in 2015. And that actually started when I was in the Parks Department. And like I said, when I moved over in 2017 to El Paso Animal Services, we began developing our strategic plan for that department. Again, focusing on results, setting clear goals, and helping our team and our community achieve more. That's what we really wanted to do. And so we did set out, and we have a very strong strategic plan that has withstand this last year with all the changes that we've had. It still is strong, and we're still going by it. It's put together by our community, by our stakeholders, by our staff of all levels. We have buy-in from city council. We have buy-in from businesses. Everyone in the community understands our strategic plan, understands the goals that we want to achieve. And that's pretty amazing as to watch it work as we're going through this last year, to really watch, with all the changes, hey, our strategic plan's still the same. We're still going for the same goals. We're just having to make some adjustments in those goals, but we still have our clear goals.
So how does that work? Like, how do you guys involve constituents outside of just the animal services department in that process? Like, literally, how do you get their feedback? How are they looped into that?
Well, when we started, it was pre-COVID, so we didn't have all of these little Zoom meetings, but we called them in. We had meetings, we had surveys, we brought staff in, and it was hard. It was hard at the beginning to get all the activities that they wanted us to do, all the goals that they wanted our community to achieve, to come to some compromise, to understand what each other wanted, to empathize and to listen, to really listen to what our community wanted, and to be able to prioritize and put those goals together was difficult. It took a lot of time. It took a lot of listening. But let me tell you, involving all of those different stakeholders, inviting them in for meetings, talking to each other, making decisions together really gives us a really strong plan that we're working that plan and we're getting results. And I always say to my staff, is it in the plan? Then you shouldn't be doing it because it's not in the plan. And they know when they look at me, they're like, yeah, you're right, because I was part of that plan. I helped put that plan together. I'm the one that helped decide that particular part of that plan. And we continue to change the plan. It's not like rock solid. We continue to change. We continue to modify what results we want to achieve. But again, our goals are staying the same.
Yeah, I think it's, I don't want to say we're so easily distracted, but there's so much going on in our line of work, right? So it is very easy to go off the road a little bit or go down a rabbit hole with something. And so being able to kind of correct yourself and go back to, this is what our plan is. These are very specific goals that we're working towards. I think kind of having that guiding light is really useful for anyone, especially when it's almost functions like blinders, right? Like it's blinders for you. And so I think it's great how you talked about, your staff understanding when you say, is it in the plan? No. Well, they understand that because they helped to build it. Like that sort of buy-in is just so critical. And the fact that you guys were able to incorporate that from the beginning is really interesting.
Yeah, it didn't happen overnight that staff understood it.
Yeah.
But it did. I can tell you now, this 2020, they really understood it. They really understood the power of the plan because they watched our city go through some major issues in the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. And they watched how that plan really held us together.
Yeah.
And so today I can say the staff really understand their role.
That's wonderful. So what are you guys reflecting on this past year and how are you using those reflections to drive decision-making next year?
I think one of the things that's, and we've already started it, one of the things that's come out of this year is our partnerships with people that traditionally wouldn't have partnered with us, that we're reaching into a community that, and they've been amazing. I tell you, I talk about it a lot. It's this community is in El Paso is amazing, and all the different groups that we've reached out to, like El Pasoans Fighting Hunger, the Neighborhood Association, some of the groups that we weren't reaching, we're reaching now. So involving them in the plan moving forward is one of the goals. And we've already set up some teams meetings with them to look at the plan, to see if what they can enhance our plan, they need to add to the plan. We are going to be adding those new stakeholders that we got in 2021. It's going to be really important if we want to continue in this path, which has been really good. Like I said, our intake is down. A lot of things are going well at the shelter and in our community. And so we want to continue that and take our resource, be the resource outside of the shelter walls and in our neighborhoods and in our communities. So we have to take that plan to our neighborhoods and to our communities. So we're going to be doing that in 2021 to ensure that we're not forgetting any.
Yeah, that's great. And that kind of rolls in the next question. Like, what is the role of communication in terms of executing the plan? Like, who should you be communicating it to? How are you communicating it? What kind of is that part of it?
Well, a little trick I have is we communicate the strategic plan on every communication that we have. My staff can't even send an email without linking it to the strategic plan. Our budget items are not budgeted by field or medical. They're actually budgeted by strategic plan goal. Everything has to be linked to that strategic plan. Everything we do is linked to it. And so our communication, everything that we put out always has our goals, our mission, our vision. Our staff have it memorized. Now, moving forward, it's going to be interesting with all of these new groups to continue that communication in different ways. You know, I have a great public information office that works for us that ensures that we get that word out. And one of the things that I always like to do is I'm at city council almost every other week, or my staff is every other week in one form or another, getting that word out and continuing to insert yourself into the community, into the framework so that they understand what your plan is. And if they have any additions or they want to change or they want to add to it, you can have backup because you've been communicating it.
Yeah, it's just like your avenue to visibility, right? Like the more you talk about it, the more people are hearing it and remembering it and thinking about it. That tip of having staff tie it into like email communications, like that's awesome. I haven't heard that before. And like, I feel like I want to do that almost like with my own team now. Like, how can we incorporate that level of, I don't know if marriage is the right word, but exposure internally to the plan on a daily basis. I think it's a great way to make everyone understand how important their role is because they see their role tied directly to the organization's mission. So that's really cool. Thanks, Paula.
Thank you.
To the audience, we are getting some questions rolling in. We're going to save those to the end, but that's great. Please keep them coming. You use the Q&A box to pop those questions over to us. Okay, so Becca, I am going to head over to you next. Can you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about who Neighborhood Pets is and what you guys do there in Cleveland?
Sure. So my name is Becca, Brent. I'm the executive director and founder of Neighborhood Pets. Neighborhood Pets is a 501c3 nonprofit. It's a community-based, I keep referring to it as a program because it was a program up until last June. So, and I'll go into that in just a second, but our work is solely focused on keeping pets in their homes with their owners. So it's essentially a pet retention program, and it's a brick and mortar facility, and we are located in one of the most poverty-stricken communities in the city of Cleveland, and we are not connected with any shelter-based program. It's solely independent. So Neighborhood Pets, going back to what I was saying, Neighborhood Pets was initially a program of another nonprofit, which I also founded and ran. and that was a support nonprofit for Cleveland Animal Care and Control. So it was called Friends of the Cleveland Kennel. You know, your standard Friends of group that supported animal control in any way in order to, you know, increase the live release rate of the dogs at the kennel. So what we started doing, which led us in the direction of neighborhood pets, was several years ago, we got funding from the ASPCA to host an ID tag event in partnership with animal control. So that is when our wellness clinics were essentially born. So what we would do is host 3 to 4 large scale vaccine clinics in the in different neighborhoods across the city. And we would host anywhere from 500 to 600 attendees. And we would provide free vaccinations, free leashes, collars, and free microchipping and ID tags. So those events grew over time. And that led us to coming up with basically we needed something permanent because there was a huge gap in the city of Cleveland in regards to resources. Cleveland has just been, we just one-upped Detroit in regards to the poorest major city in the United States. So we're now #1. So it's definitely, it's a difficult city. Because there's a lot of obstacles and there's a lot of people who are struggling. So initially we were in the process, we started it was an internal, by a board member, an internal effort to go through the strategic planning process under the organization Friends of the Cleveland Kennel. So this was about, and backing up, Neighborhood Pets was created in October 2016. So we began the strategic planning process about a year into running Neighborhood Pets as a program. So going through the strategic planning process was, it ended up not being very helpful to us for very long, because what it was put together of stakeholders, volunteers, animal control staff, and Neighborhood Pets volunteers, as well as kennel volunteers, and various other stakeholders that kind of made the group diverse. The focus was really on the city of Cleveland, animal control, relationship with the kennel, the volunteers, really making the work that Friends of did in cohesion with the growth that animal control was doing on their own without Friends of the Cleveland Kennel. So it was very much focused on unowned animals, and Neighborhood Pets was kind of like the little pet project on the side. Okay. So what very quickly happened is that Neighborhood Pets it started with literally me being the only staff person. And I am sorry, I hope this is not dinging on I'm sorry. So it was me and volunteers in this storefront, and it grew very, very quickly to the point where we are now, we're 4 years in, and Neighborhood Pets is now, we've changed our name from the Friends of Group to Neighborhood Pets, adjusted the mission, and now I have a full staff, and we are just focused on Neighborhood Pets. So my experience with the strategic plan initially wasn't as helpful for Neighborhood Pets specifically. Most recently, in the last year, leading up to knowing that we were going to be changing our name and our mission to Neighborhood Pets, we ended up going through another plan. So this was led by a consultant, which was actually much more helpful than having someone internal do it. The very first time we did it, I would say that was a mistake. And having a consultant take us through the process was really was so much more useful. So, and we really, you know, our work, and you know, I could talk all day about Neighborhood Pets, but we're unique in that we're a grassroots organization, we're independent, and then our goal is to keep pets in their home. So we need to, you know, assess what the needs are, what are the gaps in service, and continue to adjust as time goes on. And obviously, due to the pandemic, we're looking at things that we hadn't even planned on, more emphasis on temporary care for people who are experiencing temporary homelessness. So, you know, and also a unique thing about Neighborhood Pets is the environment of the people that we're servicing, the environment of our location, and shifting our marketing and our verbiage going to our donor base that was initially geared towards animal lovers and focused on helping homeless animals. And so a big part of you know, our plan was shifting that verbiage to be more directed towards emphasizing the bond between humans and animals, and really, you know, making it about the stories, and really, I think, opening people's eyes to what hardship looks like, and what that means for the human, what they're experiencing by not being able to afford to take care of their pet, as well as what the animal is experiencing. So, and it's been a really, really interesting process, because we're very much pioneers at least in Ohio, in doing this work, especially being not based out of a shelter, and not being a clinic. So it's unique, and we've learned so much, and like I said, I could talk about it for days on end, but because I'm so passionate about it. But and I don't want to trail on. Did you want to take in a direction specifically?
Yeah, I think like what I love so much about your guys' story is that you started as one agency, and you guys started some planning, it sounded like, and then you realized that you want to serve a very targeted audience, and that wasn't really fitting in the organization you were with. So the idea of strategic planning made you guys recognize you need to branch out and do your own thing. And I think that's great, because getting back to what Paula said, strategic planning allows us to have a narrow scope. We have a focus, we know where we're going. So we can recognize when a program needs to be developed outside of that. So the fact that you guys were able to branch in and rebrand as Neighborhood Pets, and you took this very strategic focus on intake prevention and pet retention, for that matter. I think that's a great story, and how strategic planning kind of guided you guys in that direction. I also love how you brought in a consultant. I think that can be a really scary process for a lot of people, because you might not be able to find a strategic planning consultant that specializes in animal welfare, but if they know what strategic planning is, that's okay. They don't need to. So
absolutely.
I think it's great that you guys were able to do that. And you know, you can find strategic consultants can be very expensive, and they can be, you know, you can find some that'll do pro bono for you. So I think for organizations out there that don't know how to get started, bringing in a consultant can be really a helpful tool for them. So I love hearing that you guys took a stab at it, but wanted to bring someone in to help shepherd you through the process. I think that's great. I know it's something we've done, and I've been at organizations that have done that before. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
I do want to talk a little bit about like data and like what role does data play? Because I think historically we think about data typically in things like shelter animals count and the basic data matrix. So we're talking about animals coming into our shelter, a rescue group, and animals going out. And for you guys being a resource organization that is focused on pet retention, what role does data play and what type of data are you tracking or thinking about? Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So data, and I'm all about it. And it's really shifted since we first opened. And initially, when we were planning to open up the Neighborhood Pets location and start our work, the data that we were going off of was data that was collected from our wellness clinics. So we had surveys, anonymous surveys from hundreds of attendees, which was really great. And also the data from those surveys, but also our experiences working at those events and really identifying what people actually need. Another thing was poverty statistics and the intake data from Cleveland Animal Control. So intake data, poverty stats, and then that was like the initial data that we started with. Now we've been working for 4 years and we are continuing to collect more and more data. So the latest piece that we're collecting is any new, and we call our new clients members as part of a membership program. It's free, but it's essentially our first step in collecting data. So we collect data about everything. Who we're servicing, what government agencies they're dependent upon, their age range, veteran, and how they heard about us. Do they have a veterinarian? And then obviously all of their animal stats. So one of the things that in regards to that was now we need to start tracking who is directly affected by COVID, and is that why they came to us, and what were their needs initially, and then I'd like to see what that looks like a year from now. So are they going to continue needing our services, or is this a, maybe like a temporary thing? So what we found in our work is that the majority of our clients are already struggling, and COVID has just made it absolutely so much worse for them. So we are seeing an uptick in new members, but we're also seeing our existing base needing more. So we actually did, so a big part of what we're working on now is, so going back to our plan for this year, one of the big needs was to increase staff capacity in order to meet the needs of our clients. So we can't expand our services until we're actually able to handle expanding our services. So that was one of our biggest goals. But with that said, we're working with a data collection and analysis consultant who's basically helping us. And I put this plan in the resource links, but it's essentially helping us to, initially we used our data from the first 3 years to show an impact. So the impact report is also in the resource links. That impact wasn't as much, it's hard to measure the impact on the quality of life for a human and an animal, and whether or not we are helping pets stay in their homes. What we could easily show though was how many pets were vaccinated, how many pets received help from the food bank, received additional medical care, free spay and neuter, all of that. But what we're really focusing on now is using all the data that we've collected to show a different type of impact. So how are we impacting quality of life for the humans, for the pets, and how are we literally keeping pets out of the shelters and in their homes? So we have so much data to work with, and then we're also using information, statistics from, obviously the new census tract, that data for poverty stats, as well as animal control and the local animal shelter. So I'm excited to be able to show a different way of using these numbers. So it's not just literally, we've fixed this many dogs and cats this year, you know, so because that's not really why we're doing this. But how do we use those numbers and tell a story about the difference that we're making? So
Yeah.
and our impact is, we are just to give you an idea, we're the only agency doing this work like this for the city of Cleveland. So we have, we're helping right now over, it's 3,500 households and growing. So just to give you an idea of kind of where we're at with that. But yeah, it's data is a huge piece for us. And then also another piece to that, and I know I'm talking too much. Using the data to get different types of revenue streams. So we're able to track which ward of the city our clients live in. So, you know, we're helping, you know, 2,000 people who live in Ward 12 versus Ward 5. And that's how we can get money from city council members and government funding, from CDBG funding. We have a casino here. That's how you can get additional casino funds, is showing that we're helping this many people in this ward. So, so it really, there is a crossover. And that's really what I'd like to use a lot of this strategic data work, is to focus on revenue streams outside of animal focused foundations, because I think there's a lot of opportunity there. So
that's such a good point, because, and we are going to share out a budget model tool that Best Friends developed, but it is so important, because when you are doing your strategic planning, you have to understand what are your resources, and how many resources can you put towards executing that plan. So that was great. Thank you so much, Becca. And we are getting some questions to roll in. Audience, keep those coming. We'll get to those at the end of tonight's discussion. All right, Brent, I'm going to turn it over to you. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Best Friends and your role with them?
Yeah, so I'm the Senior Director of National Programs for Best Friends, which means, that title means almost nothing to anyone. So like in that role, I oversee the work that's being done by our regional team. So the first folks on the ground that are interacting and fielding a lot of the questions and challenges from our network partners that are out there. I also oversee our network partners group, which is the group that handles a lot of our larger communications platforms, such as this town hall. And then I also oversee our business intelligence and strategy team. And so from a business intelligence perspective, like that's the team at Best Friends that takes the data that we collect through our enterprise data team and then pulls that into insights that impact our programming and the work that we're doing. And so that's one of the teams that I oversee as well.
Awesome. So what does strategic planning mean to you, and why is it more important now than ever?
Yeah, well, that's a big question. So I look at strategic planning, like there are three parts of it. There is the realistic analysis of where you are right now as an organization, as just a state of being, and it can be positive, negative, it can be whatever. It is what it is, and we have to be honest with ourselves in that. There's also the goal, and Paula talked a lot about the goals and how we set goals so we know where we want to be and at some point in the future. And then the rest of the strategic plan is the steps that you need to take to get there. And so I think it's really important to be really clear on the strategic plan and honest with yourself about where you are. It's really important to be clear on where you want to be, because if you don't have those two steps right, it's really hard to get all of the steps in between that will help get you there. And so I look at it as a three-step process of just closing that gap between where you are and where you hope to be.
Absolutely. So how has Best Friends handled strategic planning historically since you've been with us?
Yeah, so, you know, in my role of where I am, I started a strategic process for us around the 2025 work. Started almost a year and a half ago on it. So it was really a couple of years into the programs. We'd built a lot of programs designed around 2025. We've collected a lot of data around 2025, being able to see what trend lines are happening on the 2025 work. And so we were able to start looking at, okay, so what are the trends? Where's this all, like what's happening out there? What is the trend line? of the programs that we're doing, what is that impact and how is that impacting 2025? So we started pulling all of that together and saying, okay, so now what does that look like? What's happening? What's good? What's bad? Let's keep the good, do more of that. What's the bad? But then most importantly, probably was identifying where the gaps were and like what's not happening that needs to, and really starting to identify that piece of it. So we started that process. We essentially completed that process in February of this year. And then like the whole COVID thing happened and a lot of other things have happened since then that have impacted it. And so we did go back through and make some pretty significant changes to it. Kind of in the June, July, August timeframe, based on some of the things that we were seeing, some new gaps that were identified for us to be able to really have what I feel like is a pretty functional roadmap for the next 4 years for us of getting from where we are today to being a country that's no kill by 2025.
Absolutely. So how, knowing that Best Friends has a lot of stakeholders, I mean, upwards of 700 to 800 staff members on any given day, thousands of network partners, a large donor base, we're a national organization. So we have a lot of constituents and stakeholders. How did we handle strategic planning? Like what did the logistics of that look like? And how are we incorporating those voices and those perspectives?
Yeah, so it's, I think in a lot of ways, like the donor piece is probably a little bit easier because a lot of them have a lot of trust in Best Friends to be able to sort of decide, like figure a lot of this out. There are some that obviously are more involved and will want to be a part of the process. We also have a national steering committee. So this is where we have members who are parts of the shelters, other national animal welfare organizations that we're getting that constant feedback from of like, what are they seeing? What are their experiences that are different from ours? We also have the feedback loop of the network partners and like we're hearing what they're saying and getting that feedback through some of our social channels so that we're seeing that. And then it's really like allowing each group within the organization to say like, this is the work that I'm doing. This is the impact that it has towards 2025. And I kind of reference it as sort of a flow up, flow down sort of process. Like we get the feedback from folks within the organization, they funnel it up to some of the senior leadership in the organization. They kind of build a plan around what they're hearing, then kind of feed it back down to other folks in the organization so that they can continue that feedback and like, does this is what we put down here, does that make sense for what you told us? Did we articulate this correctly? So you can keep that feedback loop fairly constant.
Yeah, that's so important. Can you talk a little bit about what is our roadmap and what have just been the challenges associated with rolling that out and how are we overcoming those?
Yeah, so, when you look at the scope of 2025, there are 4,800 brick and mortar shelters out there. And we really were focusing on brick and mortar shelters, most foster-based rescues, while they serve a really important role, spay and neuter groups serve a really important role. It's usually not where animals are dying. And so we're really focused on the 4,800 brick and mortar shelters. We feel like for the ones that have the largest needs and the largest gaps, like we feel like we have a great team and great programming that can help them solve these problems. Like at this point, no kill isn't something that's new. We have a really good understanding of a lot of the programs that it takes to take place. Paula on the call is a great example. Like you can implement the programs, you can have a lot of tremendous success when you do it. It's not uncharted territory. I think the biggest thing for us is trying to learn how to scale it. So, sure, we can help 200, 400 shelters that have the most need. How do you help the remaining 2,400 or 4,400? Many of them are very remote and they're very small shelters that may take in 100 animals a year, but struggle with a lot of the programs because they don't have a lot of resources. And figuring out how to scale that work has probably been the biggest challenge that we've had to identify. And that's where when I said being honest with yourself about what you can do and where you are, is I think we understood as an organization that we were spending a lot of resources, rightfully so, on large organizations that were being helpful, but like what resources can we provide for that kind of long tail of shelters that had a smaller life-saving gap? and who else could help us do that? And I think that's where a lot of our network partners have become a huge benefit, because, you know, when you hear the work that Becca and her team are doing in Cleveland, like Cleveland's not a small shelter by any stretch of the imagination, but like all of that work is helping the sheltering in their community, because they're making things like better for people and pets. And like now we have 3,100 network partners. What work can they do to help us achieve no kill by 2025? What about the other national organizations out there? What work can they take on? And so it's really understanding what you can do and do very well, but being realistic about what you're just not going to get to, and you need help.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I mean, the collaborative aspect about this, I think from all of these perspectives is present, whether it's Paula working with counselor constituents and Becca, you partnering with the shelter and working in the community, or Brent, to your point, us coordinating the work of other agencies. I just think that communication is so critical, and us being strategic in our work and working towards that common goal together. I do think another really interesting point in how Best Friends works on their strategy is we have our overarching goal, right? And that's 2025. And so I think regardless of whether it be in the entire organization or like just my one small department, it all branches and ladders up to that. So like my team's strategic plan and my individual goals ladder up to our organizational one. And that's something that can be replicated in an organization with 800 people or an organization with 8 people, that each individual sees their role as part of that organization's strategic plan or that organization's mission. And having strategic plans is really an avenue to allow everyone working with you and for you to understand how they're making an impact towards that common goal. So I think that
Definitely
is a really neat thing that we do.
Yes.
Okay, we are getting some questions from the audience. I do want to make sure that we get some time to get to these. You guys can keep those coming in the Q&A box. Our first one here is from Kathy, and it's for you, Paula. Paula, you indicate that the plan is flexible. How do you address proposed changes and implement those changes within the plan? What makes it important enough to become a change or lead to a change in the plan?
I think I did see that question. It is flexible to a point. You touched on it a little bit. The measurement tools, the data is going to drive that. And Brent actually touched on it as well. We're always going to be looking at the trends on the data of our different goals. Like, for example, I'll give you a good example. One of our goals is goal 3, provide healthier pets, right? It's a budget item. It also is a budget item. So what can we do to provide healthier pets? Spay and neuter, vaccine clinics. One of the things that wasn't on it before COVID was adding the extra food pantries for the community and delivering food to COVID homes, things like that. So anything that will enhance our overarching goal, like you said, the 2025 goal for Best Friends is no kill. Our goal for El Paso is 2020, no kill. And it's also a city goal. So anything that will help enhance that, we'll look at changing. But I have to say that I'm not very flexible once we've changed it. We go through a year, see how it works, see what we need to move on. We give everyone the chance to add to that during that time frame that we're doing it. And that for us is December and January. And then we keep working again. And then what goes right, what happens well, notice that. What maybe we need more work on, we're going to notice that, because you know what we're looking at is the data all the time. The data on all of those, and all of our 6 goals. We have different data that the program managers have to enter in each month, and we continue to look at that data, and it will change the performance measurements throughout the years.
Yeah,
Did I answer it?
I think it does. Please let us know, Kathy, if you'd like her to expand on a point, but I really like how you view it as, is it enhancing our current plan? So it's flexibility in how you execute it, it's not necessarily flexibility in what the goal is. And I think that that's a really good point. That you
Definitely.
made. Yeah.
And I think it's a really important thing too, especially like right now, because everything's changing so much. Like it's easy to see shiny new things in different places. And I think, if you don't have those goals and you can't keep things moving in a direction and like you need to be very purposeful about what is helping drive toward that goal and what may be a distraction or maybe a really good thing, but just not filling my goal. And so I think that's so smart of what they do and how they do it, is being sure that you're really looking at those programs like this is really helping drive that, so you don't end up with mission creep and chasing things that aren't necessarily solving that goal.
And I think that's a great point when it's like you provide supplemental programs or supplemental organizations. So if you're working in one lane, that's absolutely great. It doesn't hurt to have someone doing something else in the lane next door, like identifying that we're not going to cover this particular category of animal or insert program here, but we'd love to build up a partner to do that sort of thing. So very good points all around. Thank you. Becca, it looks like we've got a question for you. How did you find your consultant and how much did it cost? Your strategic planning consultant.
Oh, sure. There is there's a firm called Strategy Design Partners, and that's part of the consulting work that they do. It's a Cleveland consulting business, and one of the consultants ended up being our person. And how much did it cost? I think it's not cheap. So it depends on the scope of work, and it depends on the hours. And it really depends on the scope of work. I guess I could just simplify it and say it that way. So I mean, I would definitely plan on at least $10,000, and up, depending upon what you're looking for. But you can also get requests for proposals from a few different firms and compare quotes. And I mean, I would just advise to make sure that it's a good fit for you, because even if just because it's more expensive doesn't mean it's necessarily the best fit for you. So I like to get referrals and from other clients and kind of seeing what work they've done, and that's what we did with Strategy Design Partners. So I knew a couple of the other nonprofits that they worked with, and they have an excellent reputation in Cleveland.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Becca. Mm-hmm. It looks like we've got another one for you. If you're not a clinic, how do you meet the veterinary needs of your members?
Yeah, so we are a resource center, but we host clinics. So, and that's really part of our plan is what can we do and what are we not going to do? What we are not at this point going to get into the field of being a vet clinic or a low-cost vet clinic, but we do host preventative wellness clinics with a veterinarian, and we host those 1 to 2 times a week. We also have partner veterinary clinics. They're full-service vet clinics that we work with, and we act as the liaison between the client and the veterinarian, and work very closely. So it's not, I wouldn't call it a voucher program, because we are very much involved in the process. And we also felt that was important too, in regards to communication and maintaining our positive relationships with the veterinarian, increasing compliance rate, and really seeing it through so we know what the outcome is.
That's great. And I like how you're very forward in saying we're not going to become, a wellness clinic. We'll do this one thing, but that's outside of the scope of our plan, because that's your plan, keeping you guys in your lane. And I think that's just a great example of that, because it is. We all want to do everything, right? But that's not nearly as impactful as us, taking a very direct approach, which our strategic planning helps us with.
Yeah.
So the next one, we're coming in here. What kind of goals should you set? One that's broad, tangible. What kind of wording is important when setting a goal? No more homeless pets is very broad for most of our organizational sizes. It's very broad for our organizational size as well. Brent, do you want to tackle that one first?
Sure. And I think first of all, let's note that having a nation with no more homeless pets is a mission statement for Best Friends. It's not a goal because it actually doesn't fit with how you would want to have a goal. So getting every shelter in every community to no kill by 2025 is a goal. And so I think in that you see that it's measurable. So we instantly know we have 4,800 brick and mortar shelters that we want to get to no kill by a time frame of 2025. And I think that's where you setting the goals of making sure that it's very measurable, very specific, and has a timestamp on it so you know when you want to hit it by is really important. And then be sure that it's achievable for your organization. So like your organization making the country no kill by 2025 probably isn't achievable. But for Paula's organization, making El Paso no kill by 2020 is, and is probably going to happen for her there this year. So, I think that is like being sure that you make it achievable toward what your organization can really do, but measurable so that you can show all of that in the time frame, I think is really, really important. And again, just be as specific as you possibly can.
Yeah, I think it's good to be inspirational. Like you should stretch yourself. Your goal should be a stretch goal, but you should be able to make sure you're on track for them. You don't want to set a goal that you met last week, although it might make you feel really good. It's not going to make you as impactful as your organization has the potential to be. So that's a good one. Okay, this next question for Bethany or Brent, laddering up plans. How do you suggest that municipal orgs approach laddering up municipal strategic goals that are focused on human services? Okay, so I think, and this actually might be a good one for you, Paula. So if you have a municipality that has goals around things like transit, economic growth, how do you get animal services goals laddered into those? So how is your strategic plan part of the city of El Paso's strategic plan?
Actually, it's a good question. We actually pride ourselves in the fact that we are totally involved in our city's strategic plan. We're under Goal 8, provides a healthy, sustainable community. And underneath that is all of these organizations, like you're talking about, community development, health department, things like that. So we work together and providing resources to our community so that we're not considered just a shelter, but we're considered a resource just like those departments. And when we present to council, I don't present as just animal services. We present as that goal team that's helping the community. And that's how we present. It's pretty amazing when you see it work. It's very hard to do as a big city, and it took us a while to get there. But now that's why when COVID hit, it was so easy for us to work with community development, work with the fire department, work with the police department. And I pride myself is that El Paso Animal Services actually worked on a project to help animals or people in 2020 with every single other city department. And I don't think that had ever been done, but every other city single department has worked with us in order to provide a quality of life that our pets and our people deserve. And it's really amazing once you can get that to happen. And the first place to start is that strategic.
Super inspirational, just how you're like you saying that you're connected to every single department that's part of El Paso's broader city plan. I think that's so critical. Okay, it looks like that is both concluding our time and our audience questions. I can't thank you guys enough. Being able to hear from a large national, a larger municipal, and then a larger support agency group has been great, because regardless of what type of organization you are, how big, how small, how you're structured, what your target audience is, strategic planning is absolutely critical to making sure that you're as effective and as impactful as possible. Thank you again for sharing your time, your thoughts, all of these resources to our audience. We'll email these over to you early next week and post them to network.bestfriends.org. All right. Thank you so much, guys. Happy holidays and have a great night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.